Hello, and welcome back to a new video. Now, today we're going to get into some fun stuff. Personally, I love using this DNS server, and while Pi-hole or Ubiquity or maybe whatever the equivalent of OpenSense's like PF Block or NG was, OpenSense had a lot of good software, and I probably should go back to that, but I need a rack mount server. Anyways, off topic. Technitium is probably one of the best DNS servers I've used, and it does use an external database if you do want it to. It can work with a lot of different things. It can be heavy duty for lots of different activities and duties. For example, here, I actually use Technitium with a lot of the DNS stuff within my Kubernetes network. Now, while Kubernetes has a lot of its own cluster DNS resolvers and such, for the more cluster-wide activities, I like to use Technitium. For example, here you can see all of the statistics and analytics of the DNS server, what's been going on, what's been blocked, recursive requests, authoritative requests, failures, things like that. And you can see here IPv4, IPv6, just all sorts of good stuff here. You can see who's been requesting. I don't know what that is, but it's something in the Kubernetes network. Local node here, another local node, lots on the standard LAN. That's Bravo. I'm not sure why Bravo's looking up so much. Anyways, and you can see here top domains, database server, rancher management, our main site, Google, customers, things like that. Now, if we go around here, we can also pull up a lot of the cached information, which is all right here as well. Actually, no, zones, my apologies. Zones are authoritative overrides, modifications you can make. So like this is all the internal stuff, developer operations, things like that. This is all of our cache stuff. So ARPA, we go up, cloud, Xlink, whatever that may be, net, all these .net sites, things like that. And then allowed, all of that, blocked, nothing's been blocked. And then we have applications. We have the App Store here where we can install more stuff. And I'll show you guys this here in a second. We also have the DNS client for testing. We can modify all sorts of different settings here. DHCP stuff, which this does work as a DHCP server. However, we're not using that for it today, or in the network at all, I should say. We can see sessions, people logged in. This is currently me. Users, groups, all sorts of good stuff. We can modify certain permissions and groups, if you will. Group permissions. What is it? Role-based access control, I think, technically is what it is. Anyways, we got all sorts of logs here. So DNS and query logs, and then about our DNS server. Now, the other thing, too, is I love to use this as a filter per sorts. So as you can see here, where is it? Blocking. We have a few different clients bypassed and the address that all of these will resolve to. So we have a few different URLs here, like for example, all the NSFW stuff will automatically redirect to the DNS server here. And I'll show you guys what that looks like here in a minute. But we can also quick add all sorts of good stuff here and make any sort of changes that we need to. For example, this will pop up instead of the actual site, since this is actually being blocked by the Technitium DNS server. So in a way, it's like a heavy-duty Pi-hole for your entire network when you're running like home lab stuff or maybe bigger things you may need APIs on, all sorts of goodies. So we're going to get into it today, how to install it, setting it up, and going from there. And where we'll actually be installing it to today is our virtual machine here. So if we log in real quick, we'll make note. We should actually probably change that back. We'll leave it with no VLAN. And put it, update it real quick. Please. There you go. Okay. So to start off with, we'll want a Debian-based appliance here. Now, we'll go ahead and pull the latest information. There is an installer script right here for Technitium. And we'll go ahead and throw that in our shell right here. Oh, maybe. That's right. Okay. So we'll do technitium.com/DNS. Need internet. Will you go away? You need internet, obviously. Close out of this. Yes, yes, yes. All this other garbage. Just skip. Yep, screw it. There we go. So download now. Use this script. Make sure to copy that. And paste it. And give this one moment here to install. And once it has been installed, you should see this open up. This will give you the host name and the port to access the server, but for this reference, we'll actually be using the IP address of the system, which is 10.0.0.62. You can also access the IP of the system either by IPA, which we're on ENS 18, so right here, or sometimes ifconfig, but ifconfig may not always be installed to all systems. For example, here on Bravo, we go into shell. Ifconfig is not available in Proxmox. So we'll leave that as is. Next, we'll head over. 62, right? I think it was 62. It was, okay. And that is port 5380 on HTTP, not HTTPS. Now for this next one, we'll want to make a new password for it, and we'll just set this as password, despite what Proton Pass is yelling at me for. Go ahead and change that. Yes, yes, go away. Okay, so now that it has been set up, we can fully use this as a DNS server alone. So for example, if we want to make a new call, we can now make new requests if we do digoogle.com and then @ to point towards this server at 10.0.0.62. And that gives us the IP address for Google for the DNS server, or from the DNS server, I should say. We refresh that real quick. May not show in the logs just yet, but you'll usually see it like right around here. So now, what do we do next? DNS servers used. What else can we do? First off, we'll head over to administration. We can see our sessions. We can add new users if we need to add, maybe multiple members. Display name will be what shows up here. The username, what they sign in as, and then password and password and confirm password. We can also modify. Go away! I'm sorry. We can also add in new groups and modify their details and permissions as well. And permission sets all right here. If we want to add in maybe DNS or DHCP, this is not going well. If we want to add in DHCP, for example here, this is a default scope that's been added for us, where Technitium will essentially provide IPs to the network. You don't want more than one DHCP server on the network, otherwise they may fight with each other. You may get different clients that are getting multiple different IP addresses, and overall it will cause your network to go into a malfunctioning state. So we will for now just keep this disabled. We don't want to enable it. We already have a DHCP server, which is our Ubiquity Dream Machine. So leave this alone, and we'll head over to settings. Oh, maybe if I need... There we go. Settings. No! Here, we can add in the DNS server domain. So for example, we can now use this DNS server domain to identify the server. It is right now just yehosjake-vm. The local endpoints, so this will be the IP addresses it is available on. If the system has multiple IP addresses it can be reached from, this is a good point to add it, or maybe if you have a public and a private interface, this is common for like VPSs, for example, you'll find it here, or you'll want to set it here, excuse me. The source address where all requests should be responding from, both IPv4 and IPv6. And then the time to live record by default for zones. If you want to use a serial date scheme, there's lots of granular DNS settings you can set in here. You can also set automatic update for your DNS apps, like the block page we saw earlier. If you'd like to prefer IPv6 over IPv4, payload size, a lot of this you shouldn't necessarily need to use or mess with. For the most part, it's the same settings on my system. I haven't really needed to mess with a lot of settings here in this page. However, I would recommend the DNSSEC validation, as this can enhance the security of your DNS records and requests, as well as some systems. I believe it's MailCow. It may be another instance, but email services may require this as well to ensure your emails are not being spoofed, they're being delivered to the proper domains, things like that. So you can modify all sorts of settings here. We'll keep this all the same, client timeout, things like that. And just in case, we'll go ahead and save those settings. Now here, we can add in any different settings to the web service. This is the interface you're actually currently accessing the system on. The web service local address that you want it to be accessing from, the HTTP port if you want to add HTTPS support. So instead of accessing from HTTP, it'd be HTTPS, a certificate for that HTTPS, I cannot speak, things like that. Optional protocols, if you want to add DNS over UDP proxy, sometimes this is meant for like avoiding firewalls, for example. If maybe you want to use your own DNS server from a remote location, I wouldn't recommend exposing the port unless you know what you're doing. All sorts of different settings here. TSIG, I haven't figured out exactly what this is meant for just yet, so don't quote me on this. You probably do want to do your own research. Recursion, if you want to allow recursion for only private networks or to any request that is made to a server, public or private. Specify networks, things like that. Cache, if you want to enable cache, how much you want to save, how long that cache should be kept in the system, and then blocking here. Now, the blocking is probably one of the key parts of Technitium, at least why I like to use it. So you can enable blocking here and temporarily disable it if you ever need to. And the blocking bypass list will be for any clients who you don't wish to have filters enabled for. I would recommend this for some of the consoles. For example, Xbox Live may not be able to reach all sources if you, for example, block Windows Update because it may use the same DNS servers or DNS endpoints, I should say, like Windows Update.Microsoft.com may be blocking just all of Microsoft.com, things like that. Getting into the nitty gritty of it, essentially, be careful what you're blocking and what nodes may be affected when you do block it. And then you can do the blocking type. So if you do 0.0, it'll simply just resolve to nothing and you'll usually get a blank page. NX domain would respond to the client making that request saying, hey, this domain doesn't actually exist. And then the custom address will be like, for example, here with ours, we're responding from the DNS server here because we actually have a web server responding to these requests, letting you know, hey, we've blocked this. For now, we'll use it as NX domain. And from here, this is where you'll import your sources. So if you don't want NSFW content, if you don't want tracking, if you don't want ads, this is where you're going to add it. These URLs are not what you'll be blocking, but instead the sources. For example, here, if we go into, we'll add in the NSFW. What this is actually a full list of all domains that are not safe for work and you do want to block on the network. So for example here, pull up our command shell again. Right now, we are getting a response, 3 different A-type records. And if we add that in, save those settings, and we'll flush the cache to ensure that. And now we should be getting no response, as you can see here. So, once again, blocked, block list URL. This kind of gives additional information as to why it was blocked by Technitium. But as you can see here, the domain actually no longer exists technically. So by using these rules, you can essentially filter out a lot of the bad domains, maybe new domains, things like that. For example, here I have the newly registered domains by 1 week. Usually these aren't harmful, but especially when they're new and multiple being purchased by one person at the same time, usually a sign that something may be going on, or maybe a new campaign for scam, spam, whatever may be going out. So just for precaution, I like to add in the 1 week block domains right here, newly registered domains, I should say. And then from here, we can also add in proxies and forwarders here. If we have different DNS servers we'd like to respond to for certain domains, we can add them here as well. And then additional logging, where we'd like to store it, what queries, information should be logged, things of that sort. And then if we want to head into apps, we can go to the App Store. We can configure advanced blocking, forwarding for maybe you want to get in the nitty-gritty of forwarding certain domains and requests, PTR settings, block page, which is what we have here, what you saw earlier, default records, DNS64 functions, DNS block list, another one here, rebinding protection, which there is some interfaces and appliances that do have rebinding protection enabled. For example, if you're trying to reach OpenSense, for example, on an interface or a domain that is not configured for, DNS rebinding protection actually takes place on OpenSense saying, hey, you're not actually supposed to be accessing me from here, something's wrong. You can drop requests, failover, geocontinent. There's all sorts of applications that are actually within Technitium that you can use to filter out bad requests, maybe make requests to additional name servers that you've configured or a third party has configured, maybe your ISP. There's all sorts of little tools and widgets, per se, that you can use here. And then here, once again, you can look at any block domains, allowed domains, which none of these are showing up right now because this isn't really in use for the network. Anything in the cache, which, oh, would you look at that. And then the forced zones. Now here as well, if we add in, we'll just do this for example. Not sure if this exists. Okay, it doesn't. So, for example, here we got the annex domain for yehosjakeswebsite.net indicating that this website does not exist. However, we can add a new zone. We'll make yehosjakeswebsite.net, make it a primary zone, and add. And then from here, we can add in a new record. We'll make this @ to indicate it should only respond to this one. We'll make the IPv4 address 10.100.0.157, pointing to our website here, just as kind of a test. Save that. And it should be enabled. Go back here. Shouldn't need a flush cache or anything. Okay. And if we do that once again, there it is. There's that response. And we can go to it if we have the DNS server configured. Now, one last thing to note here is you'll want to make sure that your DNS server is actually configured and being broadcasted to the rest of your network. For example, here we have our default network, our main network. And if we go into the settings here under DHCP service management, we can configure network boot settings, TFTP, but then DNS server. And this is what you'll want to add to allow Technitium to respond to the rest of your network. So all nodes on the default network will then use your Technitium DNS server, whatever address that may be. That way you can go ahead, respond, block requests, whatever you may need to do. Additionally, you'll want to ensure too that your resolve.conf file, if you're using Linux or maybe your settings in Windows, are up to date. So for example here, actually, we'll want to go into nano etc resolve.conf. And as you can see here, our name server is currently the new Technitium DNS. And then we can reboot into Windows on another VM. And I'll show you guys how to do that and point that towards your proper DNS server. Now here in Windows, we head into our Networking Management Center right here, Network Internet Settings. we'll want to change the adapter options. And then our main Ethernet port that we're using for internet, go ahead and hit properties. And then from here, we can hit properties again on the Internet Protocol version 4, and then use the following DNS server addresses. This we can use to, that'll be your Technitium DNS server. For this example, we won't use the DNS IP we used earlier, only because that is the same machine. Basically, it's not available. So for this example, we are using the actual Technitium DNS server that is currently on the network. But you can update your DNS server here, hit OK, and then from there, everything should be ready to go. Just to verify. Come on. There we go. Yep. We're getting the same IP once again, indicating that this website has been blocked. So if you guys do have any questions or concerns, or you want to learn more on how to do something specific with Technitium, be sure to let me know down in the comments. I'll be sure to help you guys out, let you know, and point you in the right direction, and get the best and up-to-date information I can for you guys to help you grow your knowledge further and kind of just grow in the IT world, I guess. So yeah, leave me a comment down below, questions, concerns, whatever it may be, and yeah, see you guys again in the next one.